Warning. Uncharted planet detected. Scanning. Scanning. Warning. Life form detected. Life form identified. Mike Leonard of Cheapo Products. Incoming transmission.
Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Traveller RPG headquarters. You can find our Facebook group by searching our name in the Facebook search tool or find a link in the video description below. Thanks for participating in our third annual Mayday Traveller Day event. It's a day we celebrate Traveller and all its additions and offshoots for all the fun times it's given us around the gaming table with friends and family. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and today I'm happy to introduce Mr. Mike Leonard of Cheapo Products. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me. I always enjoy it.
Thanks for this is your second year returning, or your first year returning, your second year doing the interviews. So thank you very much.
Yeah. I enjoyed it last year, and I'm glad to be a part of the community, and I love what you've done to help keep it going.
Oh, thanks, man. That's thanks for the kind feedback. I appreciate that. So tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself. Who are you, and where are you from?
Well, I'll be 47 on Friday. I've been gaming for 32 years. I grew up around Kansas City, but I've lived out in rural Missouri and the Ozarks for most of the last 30 years.
What brings you out to the Ozarks?
Well, So I'm autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome, but nobody knew what that was 30 years ago when I was getting out of school. And I just got to the point where I kind of gave up on everything. And my dad's business had been bought by a company out here. And so I moved down with him. And then fortunately, within a week, found a friend who also played the same RPGs as me. And that kind of helped me focus on figuring out what was wrong and what was right, and moving forward with my plans in life instead of what everybody else told you had to do.
Oh, cool. So
then I met my future wife and tried to drag her to the city, but after a year decided, nope, it's better out here in the country.
I also live in the country, and it's definitely relaxing.
Yes.
So growing up, did you have a favorite sci-fi book or TV show or movie that inspired you in the ways of sci-fi?
Well, that autism, had anybody known about it, would have been very clear when I was about 3 years old, and they took me to see Star Wars: A New Hope, and I recited the film verbatim for 2 months afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, watching television, Star Trek was always my greatest fascination. So I've always been a Trekkie and a Star Wars fan, and they've just really kind of been a major piece of who I am.
Who's your favorite character on Star Trek?
Spock was originally, then Data on Next Generation, and Odo on Deep Space Nine, and Seven of Nine on Voyager.
All right, cool.
All of the oddballs that have difficulty understanding how everybody else gets along so well.
Oh, interesting connection. All right, and then in Star Wars, who's your favorite Star Wars character?
Star Wars, I really just leaned entirely towards Luke when I was watching it when I was younger. As time's gone by, I think R2-D2 has probably been my favorite because he's just sort of laid back and they gave him a lot of attitude in the prequels that I think fits him very well.
And do you have any hobbies aside from gaming?
Well, work. I honestly, if I'm not working on artwork for a game setup or for one of my products or for one of the publishers, I'm either playing video games or working on role-playing games. It's pretty much all I ever do.
It sounds like you made your vacation your vocation, or vice versa, however that Mark Twain saying goes.
Yeah, well, that absolutely is true. Palladium Books gave me my start, and that's where I learned with my role-playing games from them. And every year they take me to Gen Con, and I work their booth and run errands and run games. And Palladium pays for the ticket to get in and pays for the hotel and takes me to dinner every night. That's pretty much been my favorite vacation. Looking forward to every year getting to Gen Con.
Awesome. Did Palladium do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Rifts?
Yes, they did. In
Okay.
fact, my introduction was because of my collection of the Turtles comic book. I was back when it was still black and white before the cartoon came out.
Uh-huh.
They made it a little bit more kid friendly.
Right.
I was standing in line at my local comic store, and I noticed a book across the room in the dark corner that I could swear was Kevin Eastman art, and it was. It was Mutants Down Under for their after the bomb setting for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I bought it and I loved it and realized it was a game, and then I bought the whole Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness game and started collecting all of them. Now I've got every book.
Awesome. So in the spirit of Traveller, I've been asking the guests to stat themselves. So in Traveller, you get a base of 3 background skills at level 0 that represent skills that you depended on or relied upon a lot growing up. What would you say your 3 background skills are?
I've always been one to study everything going on around me, partly to try and figure out what it was that was motivating people. So I'd definitely say self-ontology.
Okay.
And my efforts to try and understand people also made me pretty good at reading them. So persuade would most definitely be one of those skills I developed early on.
Okay. These don't have to be canon, by the way. Just whatever.
Oh yeah, no, but these all fit perfectly.
Okay, all right.
I denied to myself that I was a salesman for a very long time until I was selling frozen food for Schwann's, and my boss and I were standing outside with a couple other guys. They're like, "What was your first sales experience? What was your first sales experience?" And it hit me that it was when I was in junior high school. I would walk to school instead of riding the bus and spend my lunch money on candy that I'd then quadruple my money by selling at school. So persuade, definitely. And then, of course, art. That's always been a piece of who I am, making art.
What's your favorite kind of art? Or what back then as a kid, what kind of art did you draw? Spaceships or?
Back then, it was comics. I was always wanting to be in the comic book field. And I would do comic strips in class of my least favorite teacher and the most annoying kids in the classroom. I remember once in the 3rd grade, there was an art contest. We were supposed to design a hot air balloon, and the movie E.T. had just come out. So I had the poster on my wall, and I was basically doing the poster so that the majority of the balloon was the moon, and then it was the 2 fingers coming across to touch with the glowing finger. And this kid who lived down the street said he couldn't draw, and he wanted a cool car. So I drew a 1969 Corvette for him, and then he won the art contest for the Corvette that I drew for him. And when I tried to point out that I was the one that drew it for him, they sent me to the principal for lying, trying to steal.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hey.
But I kept it the art anyways. So.
Well, I'm glad you didn't feel burned. I had a similar experience, but I'll tell you about it offline. Involving computers. Long and the short of it was I didn't have the prerequisite to get into computer class, so I arranged to do the final, and if I could pass it, they'd let me in, and I passed it, and then they said I cheated. So, yeah. Because how could you do that without the math prerequisite? Yeah.
Right, like the day after tomorrow, he flunked you for being smarter than him. Yeah, because I just did the math in my head. I didn't show my work, so he said it was impossible to do that because he couldn't do it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Typical.
Yeah. So did you ever go to university or join the military?
I actually dropped out and got my GED my senior year. I couldn't handle the social difficulties I had as an autistic person in a world that didn't know anything about Asperger's, had no support for it. But a few years later, I did actually join the Navy and went through the delayed entry program, and then got separated because I had got a GED instead of having a regular diploma. So I was only in for about 13 days of minimum security prison work camp.
Wow. I thought they took GEDs. No more.
Well, I mean, it's a random change. They take turns. Each branch takes turns accepting people with GEDs. At the time, the Navy was the only ones that would accept it. And but Clinton had reduced the military, but he hadn't reduced the Cold War recruiting quotas.
I see.
So like 80% of people who were going in were being separated for one reason or another. The majority of them for being cannabis dependence, which
Gotcha.
is if they could get you to admit of being in the same room with somebody who had smoked a joint at one time.
Yeah.
That was your problem.
Right.
But when I got home about a week later, I got a call from a JAG at my local MEP center saying that they were doing an investigation of separations and I shouldn't have been kicked out and he could get me back in. And I'm like, no, I really joined the Navy to get away from a crazy girlfriend. And now that I'm back out after that 13 days in minimum security prison work camp, I'm thinking maybe it's not the best idea for me. So,
maybe I made a mistake.
Right. Maybe this was a gift horse that I shouldn't look in the mouth and just go with it.
Gotcha. So that answers the question about my next question was going to be if you hadn't joined the military, which branch would you hope you got drafted into? Sounds like Navy.
I actually joined with the intention of being a Navy SEAL and had all of the basic physical PT requirements under my belt before I went to basic so that I'd be able to get in.
Oh.
But didn't happen. It was like at the time it was 90 push-ups in 90 seconds, followed by 90 sit-ups in 90 seconds, followed by 90 pull-ups in 90 seconds.
I have a nephew who had to work hard to get to the physical fitness levels to join the Air Force. So I appreciate the hard work people do to do that, man. It's amazing. Yeah,
well, my role-playing games I can attribute to some of that success. I had a backpack that I would fill up with role-playing game books until it was about 50 pounds. And I'd put it on my back and I'd ride my bike a mile to the park and I'd run 2 miles at the park and then ride my bike back. And I lived on top of a hill. So that last part was always the hardest. But
that's the nerdiest fitness workout I've ever heard. So, all right. Well, that gets me to your personal stats. So, Traveller, I'm sure you know, but for the reminder of the audience, we have strength, dex, and endurance are your physical stats, and then you have intellect, education, and social standing, which is also your kind of your charisma, skill carryover. What would you say is your personal stats?
Well, I've always been too smart for my own good. A lot of people, I joke a lot to try and cover up and make it easier to get along, and people call me a smart ass. And I'm like, well, I figure I've got too much to fit in my head. Everybody else keeps their head up their ass, so if I put my extra smarts there, maybe I'd fit in better. To that end, I would say that my social probably is higher than I consider it myself, but I wouldn't say it's high in general.
Okay.
I've always had an extraordinary amount of endurance. Growing up as an odd kid with autism, I got beat up a lot, but I learned how to take a punch.
Okay.
And the fact that, 2019, I got diagnosed with high blood pressure and being a stroke or heart attack risk. And so I just got to where I could run 5K and did it every day for 9 months.
Wow.
So endurance is definitely high.
We say like 12, or where do you think it's at?
No, maybe an 11. I don't know. I don't like to overestimate myself. So, of course, last year with COVID, I didn't do a lot of running. I only did twice. And then a few months ago, my wife and I are getting a divorce. We separated in September. And
sorry to hear that.
Last month, I met somebody on Tinder who I thought, this can't possibly be a real person. And then she sent me a candid photo. I'm like, oh, crap, she is an 11. I'm at best a 6.5. I got to lose some weight. So I went out and I ran 5K in 30 minutes, which is not my best time, but it was pretty extraordinary considering I hadn't done it in 2 years.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good motivator. So, so what would you put your so let's say we got your endurance around 11. What would you say for your intellect?
Definitely an 11 for intellect.
Okay, education.
They made the mistake of telling me my IQ when I was in the gifted program when I was 13.
Went straight
and
to
that
your
kind
head.
of made it difficult for me. Yeah, it went straight to my head. Years later, I took one of those online tests, and I figured I'd lived out in the country long enough, it'd probably go down. And it was a little bit lower, but it was still in the genius level, so I'm up there.
All right. So, 15? That's a human maximum.
Well, if 15 is the maximum, I'd say I'm probably a 13.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
And what about education? That
My
includes
education
that can include
formally,
self-study.
right. Well, self-study has always put me up there. For years, I've lived here and worked around Rolla, Missouri, and I had friends that were graduate students that were all getting their doctorates in various degrees of engineering, and I could hold my own in a conversation with any one of them about any topic they could come up with. So I'd say it's at least an 11. I got to have a bonus in there somewhere.
All right. Yeah. Give yourself bonuses. All right.
Yeah.
All right then. So that sounds like a good character you got there.
Yeah. Well, and I can say when I was younger, my dexterity was pretty extraordinary, but every age run I've had to do has definitely taken a hit there. So.
Yeah. You keep failing your aging roll.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's that and the accident that I had in 2011. I got 2 plates in my hip, 2 screws in my ankle, and arthritis in my foot. So even though I can get myself up to a 26-minute 5K, that's about the best of it anymore.
Mm.
No.
So think back and tell us about what was the first. Well, first of all, has gaming always been part of your life? Did you have family game night or anything like that at your house?
No. In fact, I did learn to play chess when I was 5, and the only person I was really friends with from 8 on until I moved out to the country, he and I played chess all the time. We played mostly with his miniature army men. Other than that, so he was a big history buff, and so was I.
Mm.
But besides chess, there was the standard family board games once in a while, and those usually ended with somebody flipping a board. So I wasn't really into games much at all until I discovered role-playing games. And it turned out all the guys that I found in school to play with were also on the chess team. So I actually ended up getting an academic letter in chess.
Oh, cool! Wow. So tell us about how you discovered RPGs.
Well, like I said, I was at the comic book store and saw that Kevin Eastman art from across the room, and that it was like a whole rack. It was all Palladium books, and the fantasy. I thought, well, fantasy's easy for anybody to figure out. Everybody knows elves, dwarves, orcs, ogres, stuff like that. I'd read every book in the school library by the time I was 9, and there was a lot of the old fairy tale and storybooks there, so I could relate to that. So I bought up all of the Palladium fantasy books that had been published, and ended up running a game for 8 guys, none of whom had ever played role-playing games before. And it was a pretty terrible game, I'm sure, but everybody enjoyed it, and we started kind of trying to play regularly. And then when Rifts came out, that became my jam. And that one, and of course, Palladium also had the superhero game, Heroes Unlimited, that kind of crossed over with Turtles, and I ran that game a lot with them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Heroes Unlimited was my first exposure to superhero games, and then I went over to Hero System Champions. But my wife enjoys Robotech, which I think is also Palladium.
That was actually the only game I didn't collect the first go around because I just didn't have enough money to keep the comics and the role playing games and do that. So I kept my comics for a little bit longer.
Mm.
And I had watched, I got up at 5 a.m. in Kansas City to watch Channel 62 play Robotech. But after the first season, Channel 62 kind of broke. In fact, they literally broke. It was such an old broadcast station that they had like vacuum tube systems set up.
Oh, no.
And I talked to the guy years later about how the system had gotten bad, and he said he was there when that last set of vacuum tubes blew up that made them get down to like 20% signal strength.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't ever fix it. I was like, well, that's why I stopped watching Robotech, because the picture was so bad.
I remember when we were kids, you could go into any Walgreens and buy vacuum tubes, and they had a tube tester.
Yep. Yeah.
Crazy. And that was even old tech then.
Yeah. Well, our first television when I was growing up was one of those console TVs.
Uh-huh.
And I remember my dad showing me when I was 4, taking the back off and changing the tubes.
Yeah, crazy. It's like your TV's running by light bulb.
Exactly.
So weird.
Yeah.
So what was it that made role-playing games click for you?
Well, I'm a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. My imagination has always been more vivid than the people around me, and being able to use the game to tell a story with other people's help me realize that I could feed off of their ideas that I might not have had myself to make the story even better. And it was also really my only gateway to socialization. It was a place where, even as nerds, people would ignore the things they didn't like about you because they enjoyed the game. And so it was like a way to figure out what those, when they start getting annoyed, it's like, okay, well, I don't want this to stop, so I'll stop being the kind of guy who does that thing that annoys them. It helped me learn to start studying regular, normal human behavior so I could mimic it better and fit in better and play my characters better. Yeah, I attribute role-playing games as the sole source of how I overcame my autism.
I've heard similar stories. I've heard things about people who overcame disabilities, who overcame reading and math problems because they had to read the rules and do dice adding.
Well, a great example, Carmen Belair, who's written several books for Palladium, he is extremely dyslexic, but his love of role-playing games not only made him learn to read better, but also to be a published author.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something magical about role-playing games. So
definitely.
So when did you know you were hooked in this?
I was 13 when I got into it, and I'd say probably 13 and a half. It got to that point when I was 18. I was like, all right, I don't have the income to maintain all three hobbies, which at the time were role-playing games, comics, and girls, and I gave up comic books.
Sorry, comic books.
Yeah.
So, do you prefer to be a GM or a player, or both?
I do enjoy playing, but I feel like I'm better off as a game master because, aside from having a little more control over the story, I really enjoy feeding off everybody else's ideas and convincing them that it was mine. I actually, when I run a game, I'll just get the base setup and then I'll let the players run with it. And whatever they say, I'll be like, okay, bam, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And I can feed off of whatever ideas they have and usually off the top of my head come up with the right encounter or make that direction seem like it was my plan to begin with.
Being able to improvise is a very useful skill for the GM. And a lot of folks have been giving that advice and during the interviews, like to just produce a framework and kind of go with it, and then it's going to change, so just expect it to change.
Right. Well, have you watched the movies The Gamers?
No.
Okay, so Zombie Orpheus Entertainment, they're a bunch of gamers who like to make movies. So they've made a series of films called The Gamers, and it's people, they're sitting around playing the game, and then it's them as their characters acting out.
All right.
And they've done a whole variety like that. But every year at Gen Con, they do The Gamers Live, which is sort of like Whose Line Is It Anyway, but they're playing their characters in a game, and then when they ring a bell, they jump up and they play those characters, and people who are from the audience can go up and be the NPC orcs or ogres or whatever it is.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Right. So there was no Gen Con last year for COVID, but in 2019, I've been spending several years kind of weaseling my way into that group of people and becoming friends with all of them. And in 2019, Christian Doyle dragged me up on stage, and I sat up on stage with him for an hour and a half, being in the Gamers Live. Improvisation is definitely a necessary skill for a GM, but it makes life a lot of fun.
Wow, man, that sounds totally fun. I need to figure out how to get in on that.
Yeah.
I kind of think of adventures kind of like a hurricane, like you know where it's at right now and where it's going to be soon, but as it goes distant from now, you don't know where it's going to end up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about how you first got into Traveller.
No, I was actually running a Phase World game, which is an offshoot of Rips, a space game. And I was designing a spaceship for my group, and I wanted to get better at doing deck plans. And I noticed was GURPS Traveller Modular Cutter book. And I picked that up for ideas on how to make deck plans and thought it was really cool. And then forgot I had it for several years until, 2017, I bought the Traveller D20 bundle of holding.
Uh-huh.
quickly realized that I don't really like the D20 system. And then I discovered the regular books and kind of got into Mongoose after that.
And what was it that drew you to Traveller?
The sheer volume of source material that already exists, the fact that there's been so many different incarnations of the game, but they've maintained a single timeline with all of it still being canon. I love that. I love that there's stuff from so long ago that still holds up today as a fun game.
I think that is an appeal. The vast amount. I mean, there's so much that's already been developed.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the trend, and haven't done work for Palladium since 1996. They've always tried to maintain compatibility. If you made a character with one of their versions of their game from 1983, it requires very little work to make it playable in their current version of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And some people complain about that, but not having to go out every 2 to 4 years and buy all the books over again, that's actually pretty cool.
Right.
And Traveller being the way it is, you can just go to those old books and drag them up into your game for the current system, and it's very little change necessary to make them work.
Right. Yeah, they're pretty interchangeable.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Traveller career?
I pretty much always end up doing a rogue. I always play them as honorable, like okay, I've done all these bad things in my past, but now I'm going to be a good guy. But the way I tend to play a character, I end up going overboard with manipulation, and my GMs usually just kind of run with it if my rolls come out good. My current character I'm playing in an online video chat game, he took art performance in his college days, and that's been the basis of his success in manipulating people throughout the game.
Do you have a favorite all-time story about something that happened in Traveller, or a no shit, there I was type story?
Right. So the very first time I played, it was an earlier version. It was actually the same character. I just transplanted him over to this one, assuming it happened after the end of that adventure. We played The Great Rift. That was the first Mongoose product I bought. I backed the Kickstarter for it. And in that, there's a point where you've got this ship, and you're on Succardi, I believe, and there's like revolution starting to happen, so you've got to get off the planet. And my character decided he was going to do this, but some of our group had gone off to a military base to do some investigation, and we needed to leave immediately, and they were over there without major transportation. So my character has been schmoozing the people who work at the starport, taking them out to dinner every night, becoming friendly with them. And the GM determined there were 3 people that worked there that considered me a good friend. So he calls one of them up and says, how much exactly would it take for me to get a clean title for that Phrygian trader sitting over there? And he said, I can get you that for 15,000 credits. And said, done. Get it now. And I got a mechanic to run with me over there and get the thing started so I could use it to go airlift them from the military base. Get over there to airlift them in the military base. Well, as soon as I take off, they're like, you're in restricted airspace. And so then I conned the military people telling me that, insisting that I was actually the commanding officer of a military unit from the main homeworld that runs Succardi, and that we had been under attack, and I was trying to medevac out half my guys who were attacked in the streets. Succeeded in those roles, but they wouldn't let me land at the base. So we landed at an abandoned airfield, and the other guys stole a Thopter, I guess like a hover helicopter thing, and managed to get it there. And I managed to make a critical success roll to fly it into the smaller air bay or cargo bay of this ship so we could steal it while we were taking off for orbit.
Memorable moments like that make Traveller games awesome.
My only regret was I hadn't asked for some high altitude, low opening parachute gear as starting equipment for my character, because as we were taking off, my guy radios the one guy I left back at the main ship, and we had left the mechanic who didn't have piloting skills. But the guy in our group who was actually the pilot walked him through a bunch of technobabble about piloting, about how it's basically an automatic procedure to do a launch. and made enough good rolls to basically carry it over and walk him step by step through launching to orbit. So it was pretty good. We ended up welding that Phrygian trader onto the docking clamps that were supposed to hold a launch about 2/3 the size of this Phrygian trader, so that we could slave the engines together to make a jump to another system and sell the ship.
Sounds epic.
Lots of stuff. Yeah, it was epic. It was great.
That's awesome. So let's say you're at a gaming store and you notice a group of people just sat down with a big pile of Traveller books and they're trying to figure this out. You decide you want to impart some wisdom on these folks. What kind of advice would you give to a brand new Traveller player?
For a new player, I would advise them to just lean on the background that they roll up. Don't just look at the words on it. Figure out, okay, they went in the Navy and had this happen. Build a little story in their mind about what that was, and remember that is what really will inform every decision they make down the line. I don't know about a lot of other games don't really focus on the background as much as Traveller does, and I love that they do because it gives you a well-rounded person that you can easily extrapolate from who they've been to who they want to be.
That's a good observation. That's a feature I really like too. The life, what do you want to call it? Like the life story of your character that you build as you generate your character. It's very cool.
Right.
And so, what sort of advice would you give to a brand new Traveller GM referee?
I would say focus on learning the setting where you're starting them. Get all the information you can about what world or what starport they're starting in and the local economy, and just be prepared to recognize the players are going to pick a different direction than whatever one you would.
So what do you think a family member finds out that you're a Traveller guy and they want to learn how to play Traveller too? What would you suggest they buy as their basic set to get started?
Core rulebook. Honestly, I like the way Mongoose has laid theirs out. I think it's a little more reader friendly. If you're an advanced gamer, I've heard a lot of complaints about it being a little jumbled, but from that perspective of not having played a game, I think that it is a little bit easier for them. And aside from that, they can always use TravellerMap.com and Traveller Wiki to figure out where they want to go and use those for a while before they even need to buy the books based on those different spots. Oh, and of course, they need to get some El Cheapo paper minis to go with the game.
Of course. The Traveller map is something else. Joshua Bell did a great job at that project. Fantastic.
It is spectacular. Whenever I'm playing, I use 55-inch TV to throw it up there, so I've got that star map handy.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. Would also be good as a table display.
Yes.
Yeah. So these kids now they got the Central Supply catalog open and they're trying to figure out what their starter gear is. What 3 items would you recommend every Traveller carry in their backpack?
Med kit, a radio, and an auto pistol.
All right. That was
honestly,
fast.
I've run a lot of games. I've run a lot of games where there's never been any combat, but yeah, you want to have a gun. It's an all-around handy tool.
All right. Okay. So tell us about how you became a content creator. When did you start making commercial products for gaming?
Well, I started actually making paper minis in 2014 for Palladium books. I had already done the character sheets for Rips and the Palladium Fantasy game back in '92, even though they weren't published till '96. But I just kind of rested on that for a long time, and then I was starting to do some freelance art here and there for Palladium, and I thought it would be a good extra market to make some extra money for them.
And so what was your first El Cheapo product?
I didn't actually put the El Cheapo logo on anything until I started doing the Traveller's Aid Society minis for Mongoose. I'd say that was about 4 years ago.
Okay.
So, and then it was about I guess I did those for about a year before I started into making my own side products, which work perfectly for Traveller, but don't have the task logo on them.
Right, right. So I noticed you have a lot of titles that you contributed to. How many would you estimate?
I've got 63 products on drive-through that I've done entirely by myself. Some of them for Palladium, some for the task logo, and then my El Cheapo label products. But I've contributed to 15 books for Palladium, and I've done over 130 images for Mongoose, although I'm not quite sure how many books those are divided up between, because some of them are still in production. My first work for them was in the JTAS books, books 5 and 6. I did some ship designs for them there.
Oh, cool. So what inspired you to really kind of get started?
I always liked miniatures, but I have absolutely no patience for painting. And because I had always wanted to be in comics, when I got my first good computer system, I bought Poser, which is, mostly just characters, physical people that you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd gotten pretty good at that and moved over to Dad's studio when it became free and had a ridiculously large library of models to pull from.
Right.
And realized I could make cool looking miniatures as cardboard standees, paper miniatures. And I want some paper miniatures. And so there it was. I started making them. And I pitched the idea to Palladium because I figured I could do the whole thing and they could just, stamp their approval on it and put it in their store. And they agreed, and there it was.
Wow, cool. So you just you wanted to see it and then you made it.
Exactly.
All right. That's cool. Do you do the entire process yourself, or do you have help?
Entirely by myself. I mean, I'd seen other paper miniatures on the market. I didn't really like the way they were done, but I saw how easy I could do it. It took me a while to figure out my process, but once I did, obviously, you see how many products I've got out there. It got to be a lot easier for me, and I really enjoy making the characters.
How long does it take to from concept to delivery on your typical product?
Let's see. When I first started, I think I probably spent about 2 months of my free time working on those. But I created a bunch of actions in Photoshop to help me speed the process. And then when I started really getting into doing the task minis and the El Cheapo minis, I got to where I could turn out a set of 24 minis in probably 2 days of free time.
Oh, wow. Pretty fast.
Yeah. While watching TV, I'd sit there all weekend watching TV and making minis to be done with it.
What's your favorite type of content to produce? Do you like to do the minis, or do you prefer like deck plans, maps, modules, rules?
Honestly, the deck plans are the things I love the most. I mean, I've got so many minis at this point. Maybe I've burned myself out on them a little bit. I still kind of enjoy it, but I like the challenge of coming up with those different designs for deck plans. In fact, when I started doing the ship art for Mongoose, I talked to them about it. They always do those, I forget what they call them. Their designs for deck plans aren't really useful as maps.
No, the isometric view.
Said, yeah, the isometric view. Mm-hmm. They look cool, but they're not useful in a game with miniatures. And they said there was no problem for me to use the task logo to go ahead and do regular top-down maps for those ships. And so I've built this library now of vehicles and starships for them that I'm going to hopefully at some point sit down and start making those deck plans.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about your feature sci-fi product, your best traveler thing. Do you have what's your most recently released product?
Well, my most recently released was El Cheapo Miniatures Volume 14, Mercenary Folk. That's another batch of 24 armed humanity-based characters.
Okay.
Feature-wise, I'm always pushing for that Daniford Light Trader to sell because it's like I say, it's my first major deck plan. I was pretty happy with it, and the side project with it, the launch it came with.
Yeah. What would you say is the best feature of those of the either the miniatures or the deck?
Well, for the miniatures, I know players like to have guns and swords and the like, and the Mercenary Folk I did. There's 24 armed and armored characters. There's 8 male and 8 female that I designed, and then I do basically there's 4. I do 8 characters, 4 male and 4 female, and then I do 3 variations on each of them.
All right.
So you're getting 24. There's 8 different poses, but you get 12 female and 12 males. And there's the variety there, and it's only $1.89. I mean, that's a pretty good price, I think. Kind of crazy. $1.13 on sale right now, actually.
Oh. All right.
Yeah.
And what's your what's the best features and benefits of the deck plan?
The deck plans, I laid them out by the rules with Mongoose, second edition, but I consulted with a couple of people with the earlier editions that I didn't have a lot of familiarity with, and they're still viable by those. So currently, I have a free tasks file with the download of the stats for it for Mongoose. So you can download those, and it totally fit in the game. It's got the prices exactly right on it.
Oh, cool.
The way I designed it, it's a white freighter, but the launch, which is a separate ship, is designed to be a fuel skimmer. So you got to jump. I believe I made it a jump two ship, but with the fuel skimmer, it has external tanks that'll give you another jump, or another full fuel load. So you can basically make another jump 2 with it.
All right.
So you get in system,
get a jump 4 range.
Right. You get in system and you assign a couple crew to the skimmer to go off and skim the local water world or gas giant while you go do your trading. And then when you load up there and come back, you've got double the fuel.
Right. Yeah.
Also, the skimmer, I designed it to where it's got enough space and inside of it that you could actually get it as your base ship and just use it as a private business, fuel skimming and selling fuel.
Oh, cool. Where can we buy your products? Do you have a website or?
Yeah, everything's on DriveThruRPG.
Right.
If you go to the maps and play aid section and just do a search for Mike Leonard, my whole list of the ones that I've got on there will pop up.
All right, cool. What aspect of your most recent production makes you most proud? Like, what thing did you have to work the hardest on, and got the most reward from?
I feel like I'm most proud of the fact that my miniatures have a lot of diversity. 24 characters in a set, and I try to not have more than a third to 2/3 of them be just your typical white people. I've got Asians, I've got people of Indian descent and African American style characters in there, so that the variety stands out and players don't have to just be your classic white guys that everything's always been marketed at, to be able to find something that represents them.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I noticed that about your products, so it doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, well, recently somebody was collecting for one of the paper miniature forums I'm on. They were collecting a list of products that have more diversity, and I basically just gave them the link to my entire library. I try to make sure they're all diverse.
Awesome. It's nice to see yourself represented in a game.
Yes.
So tell us about other popular titles in your product line.
I'm pretty happy with my Space Elves, which was my El Cheapo version of the Darians. I mean, they basically are like Darians. That was fun to kind of branch out from humanity, which has been my main focus. I've also, for Palladium, done some contemporary miniatures. They have their Dead Rain game, which is basically zombie apocalypse. And I've got a set that's just like the survivors with all their weapons. And I've got another set that is like just random people who are scared. And then another set that's those random people as zombies.
Here they are scared, and now here they are zombies. Oh, well.
Right. They're running. And then later you can pop out the other protect the zombie.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah. And then for Heroes Unlimited, I set of cops. And they in that game, they've got a set of high-tech cops that would fight superheroes.
Okay.
The Scret, they're called. And so I did a set that has 2 squads of Scret and a couple of power armors, and those really would work in a futuristic setting too. And then I have another set that has like beat cops and SWAT guys and detectives in it. Pretty happy with how all those came.
Oh, cool. So tell us what you've been up to this past year. Did your gaming life get upset by the COVID situation?
Actually, my lack of potential for gaming partners has been changed by everybody moving their games online. I gamed more because of it, but my day job, I manage a home for the mentally handicapped. So I never got a rest like so many other people did. I never got to stay home. I just had to be more careful and help other people stay home.
I see.
And I did run a Palladium fantasy game with some of my consumers and some of my staff. So COVID actually improved my gaming. I got more gaming in it. For years, pretty much all my gaming has been when I ran games at Gen Con. But yeah, I've done probably 3 games in the last. I've done 5 games since COVID hit, and that's a new record for me in such a relatively short time. Especially being in my 40s, you know how hard it is for us at this age to get a good schedule.
Yeah,
collusion between other people's schedules.
Yeah, that virtual tabletop has really helped connect people all across the world and growing people's what I want to say, like pool of players. You don't have to just rely on your group of nerds that you know. There's a whole world of nerds out there.
That's right. Well, and to that end, I have been working on adapting my minis for use on those sites.
Cool.
And I'm doing top-down tokens of each of my characters.
Awesome.
So hopefully I'll be able to, in the next few months, load some of those up, and people who've already bought the minis will get them, and then I'll sell them as a separate set for people who would rather have those instead of the regular minis.
Awesome. So did you finish any products, or what have you been up to this last year?
Well, Mongoose has kept me pretty busy doing art for them. And of course, I'm managing this house. I actually just got a lateral promotion where they opened a brand new house and brought in consumers from other companies. And so I've just opened that with all new staff and training other people to be able to do my job. And then on the side, I also applied to be one of 8 artists who will accompany a Japanese billionaire on the first commercial space flight in 2020.
Awesome. Let's tell me more.
It's called the Dear Moon Project. And basically, like I said, he's this billionaire, and he bought all of the seats. And there's three seats that are going to be for crew, and that left 9. He bought that one. He's put out this call for artists from around the world to describe their passion project and how going to space would help that. I really realized in my day job and from all the experiences that I've had that my passion is helping other people overcome their fears and the limitations they put on themselves and recognize that anything is possible. I feel like if I were to go to space, that would put a spotlight on those people. I mean, that their flight plan is to go out or past the moon, kind of orbit out around the moon, and it'd be a higher orbit than there's ever been. So literally, whoever's on that space flight will have gone farther into space than any human in history.
Wow.
That's definitely going to put a spotlight on them, and it give me an opportunity to reach a global audience with my stories.
Right. Wow, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, I say I'm autistic, but I've also been struck by lightning and lost 2 homes to fire and nearly drowned under ice, all when I was a kid. So it's what makes it easy for me to help these people with mental illness, because the things that make them end up in that system, most of them also happen to me. I just somehow, fortunately, managed to become a functional human being.
I see. So what's your plans for the next year? What once COVID subsides, are you have any productions lined up, or are you gonna go out to any conventions or do anything?
Well, Gen Con has been moved back to September, but they do plan to have it in person, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I realized last year just how many people I only ever get to see at Gen Con, and in fact, 2 of them passed away last year without me getting to see them.
Oh no!
I very much miss the rest of those friends, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again. Otherwise, just continuing to do these art projects for Mongoose. Like right now, I'm redoing all of the vehicles for the core rulebook, which I don't know if they're planning on an entirely new edition or if they just want to update the look of it. current project, and I'll keep doing art for them as long as they'll give it to me.
Awesome. Cool. And tell us once again, how can people find you and your products? Do you have a website or Twitter, Facebook page?
I've been on DeviantArt since they opened up, so I actually managed to get Madman Mike as my moniker there without any kind of additions to it.
Okay.
That's got my big gallery, and I'll blog there usually when I put out a new product. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm not as active on either of those, but I'm Madman Mike 14 on those.
Okay.
And then, of course, Drive Through RPG, El Cheapo Products will get you just about everything I've done.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, hey, you're a very interesting person, and thank you for your contribution to the Traveller world.
I love being a contributor to it, and sometimes I sit back and marvel at how much I've been allowed to contribute to it.
It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is really awesome to be a part of these things. Same thing with Palladium. Sometimes I just marvel that I've got the creator of the games that inspired me to overcome my autism on my speed dial, and he's always happy to hear from me. People who work in the gaming industry are just like gamers that just have focused all their passion on making more games, and I'm glad to be a part of that.
It's nice when people are gracious like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, okay, you're right. There are some that aren't.
Yeah, I know, but it's nice when they are.
The majority of them are. The majority of them are just awesome, cool people to hang out with. Yeah.
All right, Mike. Well, we've come to the end of our interview. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and I've been talking with Mike Leonard of El Cheapo Products. Mike, thanks for participating in our third annual Mayday Traveller Day event.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
Hopefully you'll come back and talk with us again next year.
Yeah, we'll see what's happening at that point.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us today. That's all for now, travelers. Until next time, happy traveling.